We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the Cash Flow Pro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of Cash Flow Pro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. I am here today with Bailey Kramer, and we are going to discuss all things short-term rental. We're going to discuss low money, no money strategies. And of course, we all know that these are things that we long for. People long for these strategies because most people don't have a lot of savings, but they want to make money. And the thing that kind of separates that is the time that it takes to gather the money it takes to get started. So we're hoping to get some strategies from Bailey. We're hoping to talk short-term rentals with Bailey. We're hoping to share any types of scenarios or ideas that maybe you can latch onto and figure out where you need to go. So Bailey, welcome.
Thank you, Casey. Appreciate you having me on. And yes, we will cover all of those things.
Absolutely, man. We're tickled you're here, and we're glad to kind of get this thing on the roll and figure out, because we don't have a lot of short-term rental guests on here. But just simply because I think it's kind of a topic that I think a lot of people get into or start discussing, and then I think there's some questions around the scalability of it, which I know you have some answers to, as far as like crossing state lines or owning a short-term rental that's away from, that's in a different state or away from you, where you can't necessarily like check on it. So tell us a little bit about yourself, what got you kind of started in real estate, or how you got started, and then what kind of led you to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got started in real estate, for the short story, of course, so we don't have all day here. But short story, I was a sophomore in college, and I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. It's just always been in my blood, but didn't know a single thing about real estate. No one in my family did real estate. I didn't even know really what it was besides the house I lived in. And read Rich Dad Poor Dad, learned about this thing called real estate investing and buying assets, and just the whole Rich Dad Poor Dad philosophy that everyone seems to start with.
Yep.
And
that book is, I wish I had $1 for every time it was mentioned on here.
I know. So basically, and just to say one quick thing before that too, is in college, I had a goal. I just released a video on it literally yesterday, but I made a video making a promise to myself that I would start a business in college that I could basically run afterwards and not be stuck in a W-2 for forever.
Sure.
Or at all. So for me, it was like freshman year and part of sophomore year. It was like I was constantly searching for, like, I was like on YouTube, like side hustles to start, and like, I went down that whole like rabbit hole. I'm sure everyone knows what I'm talking about and may have been there before. But found out about real estate, found bigger pockets, just started learning everything I possibly could. Then started networking, just trying to meet people in the space and figure out, what people are actually doing, how people are actually making money, what strategies are they using. And then I decided to go the multifamily route first, actually. I was kind of hooked into the gurus, honestly, who just basically said, I make $1,000 per, $100 per door, and I own 2,000 doors.
Yep.
I didn't come to realize 6 months later that they only own a smaller percentage of it. And not to say that they're not making great money, and not to say that multifamily is not an excellent strategy to go. It's actually something that I want to get more into. I just, back to my goal of, how can I get an income stream that won't retire me by the time I finish college, but that I can continue to work on and will at least support me. Yep. And I just didn't see it through multifamily after a couple months. Made the transition to single family, bought my first fix and flip. So partnered with somebody, bought my first fix and flip, came with $2,000 out of my pocket for that first one. and then
Shoot, yeah.
we can the story kind of unfolded, started with that one there.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and so the single family, is that when you kind of when did the short term rental stuff kind of, because obviously the short term rental stuff I feel like was a branch off of the single family because of trying to maximize the profitability of one unit. Again, that's a lot of times why people give up single families, because they're like, well, you got separate everything for each unit rather than everything under one roof.
Right. Yeah. So for me in short term rentals, I stumbled upon it actually like on an accident. So what happened was to get the first four properties that I bought, two of them were fix and flips, two of them were just long term rentals. We did all creative financing and creative strategies to get the deals, and
Okay.
that's one like big like how to start with literally no money, $2,000
Yep.
is like partnering with people using creative strategies. So we're doing direct to seller, calling and texting. We were doing seller financing, subject to. We did a cash deal, raising capital.
Yep.
So we were doing all that stuff. Then just through cold calling and texting, we found this property and we said, okay, we have a super motivated seller on our hands. How can we make this deal work? We said, okay, could this be a fix and flip? We're like, it probably could be. And looking back, it would have been a great fix and flip.
Yep.
But we're like, this is way too big of a project, like way too much risk in our head for our first, this would be our third fix and flip. We were
Yep.
just like, we're not taking this big of a risk. Then we were like, could we do a long term rental with this? We're like, we could, but it's not going to be a grand slam deal. And then
Yep.
we said, well, what if we made this a short term rental? Because it's right on a lake, it's a huge house, has like some really cool features to it, huge backyard. And we said, what if we made this a short term rental? We looked up just Airbnbs in the area.
Yep.
Literally, we found out our next door neighbor, or it wasn't our neighbor at the time. We didn't know the house. The person literally right next door ran an Airbnb. So what we
Yep.
did is we went on it and we said, okay, we didn't know any of the tools and any of that. We just went on Airbnb and saw how much this guy was charging for the summer, which was coming up in like a month or two. And
Yep.
he was charging about $1,300 per night. And this is a big
Gosh,
house. Yeah.
dang.
But we're like, okay, if he's charging $1,300 a night, our house, just from looking at it, both of them, our house is bigger. It's on a better lot. It's just better in can hold more people. It's better in every single way possible. So we're like, okay, if our house is better, how would this number look if we just charged $1,000 per night? So that was just like how we did it in the beginning. We're like, if we can just charge $1,000 per night and we just estimated our occupancy, how would it do? Ran the numbers and we're like, okay, this is a good deal. This makes sense. This could be a solid deal.
Sure.
And
Sure. This is how you make it work.
and that's how we went about that first one. So yeah.
Man, that's. I mean, $1,300 a night. That's something that's just based, because you always see. I look on Airbnb too, and that's kind of the way we've traveled Europe and stuff is strictly pretty much through Airbnb. I mean, some of them are places that other people own, and they you can tell they own 10 or 15 of them, and
Right.
they have the same cleaning crews and stuff like that. But and you always see those big dollar per night things on there, and I'm always clickbaited on them just so that I can be like, I mean, I'm even talking like some of them are like $13,000 a night. I mean,
Yeah, those are insane.
crazy when you get into some of the castles and stuff in Europe that you could rent for a night or two
Right.
nights. I mean, anyway, but so $1,300 a night. I mean, that something like that, even for just the 90-day or 100-day summer period, that can tote a pretty big note, or that can generate a lot of revenue over and above what the expenses would be. I mean, depending on the cost of the house, obviously, but my gosh.
You're right. And then what happened was, we bought the house for 779,000.
Hmm.
We had $100,000 down payment. This was a seller finance deal, 3% interest. We had about $80,000 for rehab, and we started. We just listed it on Airbnb before we even, in the middle of the rehab, just so we can start getting some bookings because it was the
Sure.
summer month. And we're like, every day it's not booked, we're losing $1,000. So we
That's
just put it on there, and we did pretty good for the first like July and August. We made like around $25,000 per each month, and then September we did like 15, which is like that we don't count that as summer, so that was still pretty good. And
Sure.
then what we
Sure.
realized in September is we already got a booking for next summer.
Yep.
And then throughout July we started to raise our prices a little bit to like
Yep.
1,300 and then 1,500. So then we're like, all right, 1,500 is our number. We're not going below that. And then we get a booking like 10 months in advance. We're like, no, we can't. We're not gonna get booked up this far in advance. That means our price is too low. So we're like, all right, let's do $1,600 a night. We get another booking. We're like, okay, $1,700 a night. We get another. So we were like, we're so far out. We do not want to get too booked up and then not have any people. We want top dollar. So then now our price is $2,000 a night.
Man, and is it pretty staying pretty full?
Yeah, July and August are those are the months that we got a lot of the early bookings on.
Yeah.
Too, but we keep on getting more and more bookings. Yeah, it's gonna be a good summer.
Man, that's awesome, dude. That's a win-win. I mean, because you're looking at if you put 100,000, 779, you put 100,000 down, then you put 80 back into it. So really, you're out like let's say 750 grand, basically in seller finance money. What's
Right.
the payment on that?
Roughly $6,000 per month, all in.
So yeah, I mean, so you're talking about $72,000 for the year, and you could just dang near make. I mean, well, obviously you make that in 36 nights if it's 2 grand a night. So I mean,
Right.
so basically you rent this thing out for 1 month and it pays for the use of it for the whole year. Everything else is tax, a little bit of taxes, a little bit of insurance,
Right.
but at three, I mean, that's unbelievable. And
Right.
sometimes when sellers have higher end properties like that, doing a seller finance could potentially benefit them for taxes. It could benefit them for, I mean, a lot of different ways it could benefit them, and they don't have to take all the money at once. Then they've got a steady stream of income without having to manage it. And so, but man, a lot, that's a killer deal, dude.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And
Thank you.
and then everything else is kind of cream on top. So, all right. So the low money, no money strategies that you talk about or that you teach or show people, obviously this seller financing kind of deal or something along those lines, is that part of that? And we can talk a little bit, dig into that a little bit.
Yeah. So there's really two. It's like there's two ways to get started with no to very low money,
Okay.
both on the buying side and then also on the what I do now mainly is co-hosting. So
Okay.
co-hosting, aka managing Airbnbs, excellent way to like start build like get involved with Airbnbs and build an income stream,
Yeah.
starting with no money, and then seller financing is more buying property with no money, and they each have their pros and cons. They each have their difficulties, but yeah, happy to talk about either or both. Or
Yeah, I mean, fill us in. I mean, the either strategy because again, this is what's holding a lot of people back
yeah,
is the initial money. And some people, and I don't want to say, people like let's say somebody has $5,000 saved up. What's their best course of action?
yeah, for sure. So so I always ask like what's like the purpose of the investment? Are you looking more long term or are you looking for more cash flow up front and you don't so I'll walk you through seller financing. Both of
Okay.
these could work whether you have $5,000 or $500.
Okay.
But for seller financing, for those of you who don't even know what that means, because I didn't know what it meant before I got started, is instead of getting the simplest way to explain it is instead of getting a mortgage from a bank,
Mm-hmm.
you get the mortgage from the actual owner of that house who's going to be the seller.
Yep.
So how that looks in a practical way, and this works most clean when they don't when they own the property free and clear and they already paid off their mortgage. There's other ways to get around it, but it gets a little bit more complicated. Just so for easy sakes, let's just say I approach a homeowner who owns his house. Him or her have owned that house for maybe 25 years, or maybe they've owned it for 10 years, 5 years, and they just paid it cash for it or paid it off early.
Sure.
And I say to them, "Hey, I want to buy your house," and they say, "Okay, you can buy it for $500,000."
Yep.
And I'm like, "Oh, $500,000, like I don't know. I was looking more like in your head. You're thinking like I was thinking more in like the 450 range, maybe, or something like that.
Yep.
Well, with seller financing, the best part is you guys negotiate the terms. So, like right now, interest rates might be in the 5%,
Yep.
but with seller financing, you negotiate the interest rate yourself. Because again, it's
Well, and
just
the benefit to the seller could be if they're going to take that $500,000 and they're going to go put it in an IRA or something that's going to gain them 1 or 1.5 or 2%. They may be happy to say, "Hey, yeah, we'll hold the note on this and take 4%," which is good
right.
for you, good for them. Everybody's happy, right?
Exactly, and especially in today's market, like people are just like, I want top dollar. I want the highest price. So it's like, yeah, price is just one piece of the equation. It's like, would I have bought this house for $2 million? Well, if the interest rate's 0.0001%, then absolutely. It's like
Yep.
that's just obviously an extreme example, but interest rate and price is just one piece of it. Interest rate is actually the factor that moves that actually has the biggest impact on the deal itself.
Sure.
So, um, essentially, just like a bank, except the pre-approval part, you don't need to get pre-approved. It's more like a relationship type transaction. They don't run your credit score and any of that stuff. You
Yep.
obviously have your attorneys and your title company, and you do it just like you would with a bank. Only difference is you negotiate your own terms, and nothing is through a bank. There's no pre-approval. So for me, like I had I didn't have money. I didn't have a good credit score. It didn't matter at all.
Yeah,
So
you
that's
just go to and say, "Hey, I've got 10,000." I did that with the building we're sitting in. I called a lady one day. I could have went and got the money, but I
right,
called her and she said, "Yeah." She said, "I really don't want it all at once." And this was completely her terms. She said, "I really don't want it all at once. Would you just let me hold the money?" I mean, yeah. How quick could I get? How quick could we make this happen? And her
right.
cousin was an attorney, and 10 grand down, and I'm in sliding into home base, and it was just a win-win situation. So no, it's unreal, man. And then,
Yeah,
and again, some people and even a lot of sellers don't know or understand that they have the ability to do this. And oftentimes I've said, like, everybody's always, you have some people that are out there just to cut the middleman out. They're like, they're going to go find that they can go buy this. And they're like, if I can just get around that guy, I might save a little bit of money. Well,
right,
if you want to talk, nobody recognizes the money when they're handing it to the bank $100, $150 a month at a time.
right,
You know what I'm saying? And
right,
but the bank is the middleman.
right. For
You're
sure.
paying the middleman. You're just paying him a little bit less at a time over a longer period of time.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
so, yeah, man, that's awesome, dude. And then,
Yeah.
and what other deals have you done? I mean, obviously you're in short term vacation rentals. And I mean, how many do you have quite a few of those? Do you just have that one? What's going on there?
Yeah, so basically what happened was I bought two Airbnbs, again using these creative financing strategies. And let me just be clear, like these aren't easy to find by any means. To find a
Yeah,
good
no,
deal
I
with
mean, you
creative
might get
financing,
one out of every 1,000.
2,000, yeah. One
Yeah.
out of every
Okay.
2,000. So like yeah, I mean, depends on how you're doing it, but those were our numbers. So again, this is not an easy thing. It's definitely not a get rich quick at
Yeah.
all. Just to be clear on that. So what happened was I had these two Airbnbs, I had the two long-term rentals, and I did the two fix and flips. And what happened is I started posting about the Airbnb, the first Airbnb, and
Hmm.
all of a sudden people kept hitting me up to manage their Airbnbs, and I
Yep.
was like, okay, like that's fine. And then I realized like it took me all this work and all of this like everything, it took a lot of time to buy property, especially using creative financing. But
Yep.
then these people were coming to me, wanting me to just manage their property, and I was getting 20% of the gross revenue, like day one, with no expenses, no cost to me, and literally no risk to me. So I
Yeah.
was like, okay, like sure, I can manage it because I was starting to build the systems for my property. So I was like, yeah,
Yep.
just I'll add you in and easy. And then that started growing, growing, growing. So I'm at 17 properties now. It's only been like 10 months since I started with that.
Yep.
And now it's just right now building out that as a business so I can more work on it than work in it. So I hired
Yep.
two people to help work in it while I work on it. But again, co-hosting is like all you really need is an LLC, which costs like $250.
Yep.
And besides that, there's no other costs.
So walk us through just a little bit of, so how many different markets do you co-host in?
Yeah, so I'm in four different markets. One, two, three, five. Yeah, four different markets. Four different
Okay,
markets.
across what geographical areas?
So I'm in North Carolina.
Okay,
So Pinehurst, North Carolina, for my golfers to be specific. I
okay,
am in Terre Haute, Indiana.
okay, right up the road
I'm
from me.
in what was that?
Right up the road from me.
Oh yeah.
We're just south of Evansville. So,
Okay, cool. I have a bunch in Northern Illinois, like
okay.
an hour north of Chicago,
Whoa,
and
man,
then
that's all
I have
right.
one in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, which is all the way south of Wisconsin.
And so obviously that presents challenges, especially if you just have one. But what's the main challenge that you run across? I mean, automatically my mind goes to cleaning, or being the main challenge. But is that true? Does that hold true? I mean, is that the main like hurdle in the whole deal?
No, honestly, not really at all.
Really?
It's just a matter of finding good, like my cleaners that I found and have built a relationship that I use. Like
Yep.
I trust them with a lot of like we have a good relationship to say the
Sure.
least.
Sure.
So
Sure.
like so as far as like getting it cleaned and stuff like that, that's not a problem at all.
Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the Cashflow Pro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must-Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making Cashflow Pro part of your day. Now, back to the show.
The biggest challenge there, there's not like nothing about it. Any of this is like hard stuff.
Yeah.
It's just like a lot of little things that you just need to like do. But
But you
like
have to get all those little things, it seems like, in the right order and make sure that
right,
everything kind of runs
right. So
systematically.
I would say that's probably the hardest part is just getting everything in place. Once
Okay.
everything's in place, like building the machine is the hardest part.
Yep.
Once the machine's built, the machine's built.
Yeah.
Um,
It was very similar to this podcast when I finally, like, I would spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours trying to define different things and get everything in place. And matter of fact, I was sitting here about an hour ago and I was almost twiddling my thumbs. I'm like, what? I mean, I need to be doing something right. And it hit me. I'm like, wow, all right, this thing, it's really running. It's really finally getting in a decent stream or getting into a good routine. And so I guess it's much the same kind of deal.
yeah, I think that's with everything too. Like starting out, especially when you don't have any systems or processes or really knowledge or
Yeah.
experience, it's always tough in the beginning. But once you like, for me, I'm a big systems guy. So like, and also when I set up that first property, I actually lived not too far away from it because my parents lived here. I was in Florida for school.
Sure.
Came back home for the summer. Was near the property. Um, got it ready, or so I thought. Got it ready, but I kept on like the guests kept needing me, and I
Yep.
was like, I'm moving to Florida in like literally 2 months. So if I don't figure this out now, like there was no option. Like I had
It's
to
going to be
figure
a
it
whole
out.
lot harder to figure
Right.
it out later.
Right. So then I'm like, I'm just gonna figure out now and figure out how I can just do this so that when I'm in Florida, it will be easy. So then I
Yep.
just designed everything to make sure it can be done remotely. And like the properties in Indiana, for example, I've never been to those properties before.
Wow.
Um, like I never like I set up I furnished the property completely. It was completely, empty. I ordered the furniture, hired somebody to assemble it, got everything ready just like I do, but just figured out how to do it remotely so I don't have to be in these different places.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. And it makes, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It just, and then you create another stream. Each one is a miniature stream of income,
Right.
and then it's built on the same system, and you just duplicate and duplicate and duplicate. Now,
Right.
one of the things that we've talked about a little bit on this show, and again, our Airbnb folks are typically kind of few and far between, because we're mostly syndicators, syndicating different bigger real estate deals, and then
Right, right.
capital raisers and so on. But the arbitrage, the rental arbitrage thing was something that really, I see all the gurus on Instagram and Facebook, or not so much on Facebook, but Instagram and TikTok or whatever, that talk about, I'm going to show you how to get into short term rentals with no money and just this, and this. And while that seems like a very logical way to do it, there's just some things that seem like maybe that's not the way to do it too, I guess. I don't know. What's your thoughts?
This is my thoughts on rental arbitrage. It is the worst strategy, like all, like honestly, probably the worst strategy in all of real estate. Like I've learned about a lot of different strategies, from wholesaling to fixing and flipping. As far as like the most risky strategy,
Yeah.
to me, it is rental arbitrage. I was talking to someone this morning, and for those of you who don't know what rental arbitrage is, basically what you do is you rent a house or an apartment or a condo. You rent a property from somebody, let's just say for $2,000 a month, and you have to furnish the property. So up front you spend $10,000+ to furnish the place, and then you sign a 2 to 3 year lease with this owner, this property owner. So you say, I'm going to give you $2,000 per month for these next 2 to 3 years. You spend all this money up front to furnish the place, and then you go ahead and put that property on Airbnb, and you keep the profit between what you make on Airbnb and what you have to pay to the owner, and obviously like expenses and repairs and utilities. That's kind of negotiated, but it is such a terrible strategy because, number one, like when I look at co-hosting and arbitrage side by side, co-hosting, like I get 20% on most of my properties, 20% of the gross revenue, and there's literally no risk. Like I don't pay the mortgage, I don't pay anything out of pocket. And like there's a property I just signed on. We have a guest literally coming. We got a guest already there, but we have another one coming tomorrow. Okay. This house is going to bring in $150,000 in revenue. It has a pool, 5,000 square feet. Awesome house.
So you're getting 30 grand a year for.
Exactly. So I'm going to get like
your system,
$2 grand per month, right? Or a little bit more than $2 grand per month.
Yeah.
For just managing it. I have literally no risk at all. If the regulations change in that market for whatever reason, the worst thing that happens to me is I lose that income stream, which obviously that stinks. But if I arbitrage that property, so that's the coasting model. If I went arbitrage, I go to that owner and say, I will give you $6,000 or $7,000 per month for your property. So you have a guaranteed, like I think it's $90,000.
Yep.
And then I'm going to rent this property on Airbnb, and I'm going to keep whatever's left between that $90,000 and that $150,000. And you might be thinking, oh, well, that's $60,000. Well, do you know how much risk goes into having a $7,000 overhead on a property that you don't even own and don't even get any benefits to owning that besides the cash flow? Yep. So what I say to people is, if you're looking for strictly cash flow, go the co-hosting route. If you're like, oh, but I like arbitrage. If you're the amount of work arbitrage takes and the amount of time it takes, and co-hosting takes time as well. But with arbitrage, I say to those people, either go co-hosting or go seller financing, because a lot of the times people who do arbitrage are like, oh, I don't have a lot of money, I don't have a lot of credit, I don't have a lot of this, I don't have a lot of that. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're gonna put in all the work for arbitrage, put in the work for owning and seller financing, and you'll actually own the property too. Yeah. And if you're gonna have a risk, have a lot more upside than just the rents that, or the
sure. And then then there's also the what if they destroyed somebody else's property, and then you've got to re-put money back into something that you don't own. I mean, there's a lot of different, and again, there's a lot of different strategy there, and maybe somebody has a strategy that works really well with that particular model. But all right, so listen, we're running up on our time, and I've got a couple of questions that we ask every guest. There's no right or wrong answer. It's whatever you tell us, that's what it is. But what is the best book that you have recently read or are currently reading?
Best book I've recently read is $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozy. Unbelievable. Basically, make an offer so good that people feel stupid to say no to it.
To say no to it. That's right. That's right. Russell Brunson always said, if they're saying no, something's wrong with your offer. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
that's the one place to go, right? So,
Yep.
what is a dream vacation that you've either taken or hope to take?
Dream vacation. Whew. I've done a fair amount of traveling so far. I love traveling.
I do too.
Dream vacation. I'd probably somewhere in Asia. I haven't been to Asia. So,
Really?
yeah. I've been to Europe a
Awesome.
lot, but not Asia.
Yep. Same here. Same here. I've always thought my wife always tells me, she said, you're going to be like a sports star in Japan because I'm tall and just I won't fit in any of the rooms or anything like that. So, yeah. Good deal,
Right.
man. That's awesome. All right, so if the listeners heard something about maybe your short term strategy, your short term rental strategy, or your no money, low money, no money down strategies, or want to just reach out to you just to see what you got going on, or potentially partner with you, or maybe they have some Airbnbs they want to talk to you about co-hosting with. How can somebody reach out and get in touch with you?
Best way to get in contact with me is Instagram. Very
Okay.
active on Instagram. Send me a message. I have a lot of free resources in my bio on Instagram as well. For
Sure.
those who are interested in the co-hosting and the Airbnb stuff. I'm also on TikTok, more for entertainment purposes. But
Yep.
if you want to watch me there, I think I have fun with it. So yeah, those are the two main ways.
Cool deal, man. Well, listen, Bailey, thank you for being on the show today. I know that you brought some value to people that are listening that maybe they're even considering this business model, and maybe you pushed them on to go ahead and pursue it in one direction or another. So thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Casey.
Absolutely, man. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of the day. And again, thank you, Bailey.
Cashflow Pro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.